All right, that wasn't it for real this time. Man, what a shame. That would have been awesome just to plug that thing in and hear that pump come on. The car does have some sort of security system that was wired in as well. Not a very good one. Maybe that has a fuel shut off. So anyways, I got to clean up my mess and I'm late for dinner. So I got to go for real this time. We'll get it running. Don't worry. So here we are, Sunday at the shop, putting in that weekend work. I did take Saturday off, but if you remember, couldn't get this thing to fire up on Friday night. So of course I'm laying in bed on Friday and I'm thinking about everything on why maybe this fuel pump isn't kicking on, maybe the fusible links and the harness. And all of a sudden it kind of came to me. So if you remember, the car was pretty much in this position before I started stripping it down. And I showed you guys a tip. And that tip was how to burn out all the pressurized fuel out of the fuel system before you pull a motor. And that consisted of triggering the inertia switch in the trunk. And I don't think I ever tripped it back. So needless to say, if the switch isn't on, fuel pump isn't going to turn on. So first thing we're going to do today, we're going to keep it really simple. Go into the trunk, go down our switch, see if we can hear a fuel pump. Oh my God, there it is, guys. Prime this up a few times. All right, so we have fuel. We don't have a fire. Now, the question is, do we have spark? And most importantly, I don't know, we can check the timing and see how the timing is on the motor, but fuel pump works. All right, so since now we have fuel, I'm gonna test and see if we have spark. So I have this little spark plug tester thingamabobber, whatever you want to call it, and gonna go ahead and crank this thing over. We got all kinds of spark, which is good. All right guys, so we got fuel, we got plenty of spark, so that leads me to believe that maybe the distributor isn't in the right place. I had the distributor out, but I put it back exactly in the same position that it was when I got the motor. So maybe it was out before that and the timing wasn't set properly. So I'm going to go ahead, find top dead center on cylinder number 1. Make sure that the rotor and the cap is pointing towards the number 1 plug wire, and put everything back in, and hopefully we'll get a fire. If you've ever done timing on your motor, then you'd probably be pretty familiar with these markings. We'll go ahead, pop this guy down. Again, so we want this rotor to be facing in the right direction, which it's not there. So what we got to do is just kind of, there we go, turn things around. So the main thing that you guys want to remember is that this TFI module is usually sticking out around here on your Foxbody, depending how your timing is set. So with this cap like this, number 1 is there. The rotor is pretty close. So if we were to move the distributor a little bit this way or that way, you know, we're pretty close to number 1 there. So I'm going to try this out. I'm going to button everything back in. Now I've gone ahead and I kept rotating everything. There's a 10 and then the 20. So I'm actually just going to use a paint pen and mark out where 13, 14-ish is. So that way, when we come back and we want to set the timing on the motor for good, that I already got it marked out. That yellow mark which is the 14-degree mark. So when we go ahead and set our timing, assuming this thing is going to fire up now, we will make sure that everything is lined up with the timing light right on that 14 mark. Okay, so we found top dead center, got our distributor all in place, and in case you guys are wondering why I have the actual spark plug side of the boot on the coil here, for whatever reason, when I got this plug set of wires, the coil one wasn't long enough. So the coil one is actually running on the number 1 cylinder, and what is supposed to be the number 1 wire is running over to the coil. So a little bit of an unfortunate event, I guess different part number, but it is what it is. Little bit of information in case you guys are wondering. Let's hit this key and see what happens. So our other option is I can spray some starter fluid down the throttle body, and we can see if it wants to start that way. Whew. So there we go. It will fire. There is a problem with the fuel supply. So we need to sort that out. Question is there something in the fuel rail that's maybe clogged something, even though I blew everything out? Is there something with the injector harness that isn't working properly? You have to double check the grounds on it. Because we have fuel and we have spark. So Mr. Notorious is here, and we're just trying to find the gremlin here in our fuel distribution problem. So had a pressure gauge hooked up, got well 40 pounds of fuel
very quickly
going into the cycles. Yeah, so everything there is good. We know the motor starts on starting fluid. We put a test light on one of the injector's clips, and we can see the voltage pulsating through there as the motor's turning over. So there's fuel, the injectors are working, which means the computer is working, there's spark, and the fuel's just not making it into the cylinder. So might have to do a little bit more investigation here. Maybe there's something wrong with the pressure regulator. Maybe there's something stuck in the rail. Not really sure. So we might have to pop off this upper intake, which isn't a huge deal, but we'll see. We'll get to the bottom of it. All right, off comes the intake. All right, so we're about 2 hours into troubleshooting, and clearly there was fuel coming into the rails. We even had the rails off, blew them all out, everything else, and we started going through some of the troubleshooting steps when it comes to the injector harness wiring. One of those is to make sure that you have 12 volts to each red wire on each injector connector, which we did. And Jordan here in the background is tapping the injectors, and none of these injectors are working except for one.
1 out of 5.
So we did hear when we were cranking over the car, it sounded like it was trying to fire like just on one cylinder, and when you put your hand on the header, Cylinder number 8 was the only one that was warm. So that one seemed like it was trying to fire. And yeah, this is just, never seen this before. The injectors look clean. Somebody had painted them. I don't know if I had that in one of my videos when I was cleaning up the motor, because there is overspray on these guys. I have another set of injectors here, and when Jordan taps 12 volts onto them, you can hear them doing their thing. So I've never come across this. It's like something shorted out 7 out of 8 injectors. So needless to say, gonna go through, make sure that we have 8 proper functioning injectors. We'll get them cleaned up. We'll put everything back in here, and hopefully this thing will fire up. It should fire up because everything else is working. There's no reason for it not to. We even swapped the computer. I threw an A9L in from one of my other motors just to see, and same thing. So sounds like we found the problem. All right, so extra set of factory injectors cleaned up here, gave them a little bit of a paint. We'll get them all plugged in, get the rail on, and get our upper intake on. Hopefully this thing will fire right up. Think it'll fire?
Oh yeah.
It's gonna fire. We got it this time, for real. So before, I just want to say in my last video, remember how I said I don't always like to button everything up in the bay until I know the motor will fire? Well, case in point, because you've seen how nice and together the whole engine bay looked, and now it's all ripped apart again. So shame on me. Never assume anything, but I went for it. It's all those times when you don't care, you have nothing to worry about. When you do care, something bad's going to happen. So it's not that big of a deal. We found it out. It's not like we were chasing a bunch of wires or anything like that. Just covered the basics, kept it simple, and you know, a little bit of time, but we know what the problem is. We'll get it rectified, and we'll be back on the road soon. Inertia switch.
Please. Probably wants some O2 sensors. Yeah. And a couple other little things. But
Put it again. I'll give it some throttle.
all right. Sweet. Some O2s, some timing. Minor details. Yeah, lots
Success!
of other stuff.
Sweet.
Finally.
All right, so Sunday, fun day, successful day. Thanks to Mr. Notorious in the back. It's one of those days where you come in off schedule, not, you know, your normal routine work where you can kind of think a little bit differently. You don't have, say, the same routine, or you don't feel the same pressures, where you kind of actually go through a lot of things to get a lot of stuff done. Because we did get a lot of stuff done. We spent maybe, 3-4 hours, but when you think about all the troubleshooting and correcting, and then the cleanup, once we found out the problem with the injectors, painting those up, getting them installed, we got that passenger side header off, got one that he had extra from the blue car that got stripped down for his Project Zero project. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure that you do. I will link it in the video now. That is the original shell that never got assembled from factory. So he is now the factory putting it back together. So we got the header on, so now we can get the exhaust all buttoned up, since that was a big obstacle the other day. And we messed up the valve cover a little bit, messing around with some stuff. Some fuel got on it, paint didn't like it, so had to touch that up. That's all done, and that's it. Car starts, fires, so we can start off the week with a whole new flavor, knowing that this car is pretty much on its home stretch. So it's just going to be buttoning up, getting the exhaust bolted on. Then we have to move on to the suspension, get the rear end done, and do the brakes. From there, spray front bumper cover, get some new headlights in this thing. It'll be looking brand new. All right, so finished off Monday, got the exhaust bolted on, just finished getting underneath the car and putting in the 102 sensor that I needed, because it came in late this afternoon. Got the transmission all filled up and just finished setting the timing. And this thing starts right up, does everything as it should. The only thing that isn't done right now is there's no drive belt on, because I did notice a small leak coming from one of the power steering lines when the car was up in the air. So I got a new line there for the return. So I'm just waiting on the main pressure line to come in tomorrow. Gonna get those power steering lines swapped over, and that way I can get the drive belt on, start pumping fluid through everything, let the car get warmed up to full temperature, and it's probably gonna be ready for a little shakedown drive. So super excited for that, and super excited how this project has come along, and I hope that you guys are just as excited to see this thing running. I'm gonna go and hit that key for you guys so you can see firsthand for yourself. You know, we did get it running yesterday when we swapped those injectors over, but you know, that was just sort of like the virgin fire. So here we go. There we are, she purrs like a kitten. That's with the stock H-pipe on, there's no CATBACK yet. Got some mufflers on the floor over there, need to go get the tailpipes and everything else. It'll go to the exhaust shop, and sounds pretty good. Hear that, idling down. This thing purrs like a kitten. I had complete faith in this motor from day one. A little bit of a burn about the injectors, but other than that, this seems to be like a really good runner. So there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed this episode, as the Project 4 to 8 is really coming along, getting closer to project completion.